Hello and welcome to your weekly podcast from Freestyle Media in partnership with the Magic 5, where you can get 15% off a pair of their custom fit goggles by using the link in the description to this episode. You can also check out Oxalt Strength and Conditioning. That's Nathan Oxford, a strength and conditioning coach. He's been working with swimmers who have been getting great results both in and out of the pool. So you can check out his services by heading to www.oxalt.com. So this week, I'm joined by Master Swimmer and Innovation Director at AP Race to talk about the Masters Grand Prix event organised by AP Race, taking place on the final weekend of November at Moorways in Derby. So first things first, thanks for coming on the podcast, Kevin.
Really grateful for the invite and excited to be sitting in this chair because obviously watched the show closely and have seen all the different people you've interviewed and grateful for the invite.
No, you're welcome. And as I say, thank you so much for coming on. And it's an interesting kind of life in swimming that you've had. I know you're still only in your 30s, you're still a young man, but you've had a long time in the sport. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your sort of swimming journey.
I mean, I say I don't feel that old, but then I was at an age group meet over the weekend and I kept getting triple looks from every swimmer there, like, you can't be racing. You must be too old to race. He's got to be a dad. Yeah, and there were dads there that were younger than me, which that is what it is. But so I swimmer. That's how I define myself. Even speak to my school friends, from 30 years ago, they'd still say, "Oh, Kev, who's the swimmer?" But yeah, I joined the club at 7 years old because the club also had a learn swim scheme. So I came straight out of that and fell into the club world. I've been over my journey in 7 different clubs across 3 regions, moved around with work and education. Still compete now. I'm an active masters swimmer. My wife's also a master swimmer. My mother-in-law is a club coach. So I'd have to say that swimming is every aspect of my, working life and professional life, because it does overlap. And then with kind of my professional hat on, I'm coming up in January to nearly 20 years working in the sport of swimming. Starting off as a teacher and a coach, like many do. Worked in club world, was in the governing body for coming up to 4 years. And I'm now full-time with AP Race with the object of moving the sport forwards. That's the aim.
Yeah, sounds good. And one way that it is moving forward now is that obviously you're getting into the Masters space. It's a huge space, absolutely tons and tons of swimmers that kind of exist within this space. So it's fantastic that you're kind of entering into our world and your world as well. We've been talking for a while, and I know you've had to kind of go through a lot of things with sort of Swim England and probably various other governing bodies as well, Moorways as well, at the very least. You finally got to a point where it's passed off and the event is going ahead. You've got the schedule, the info is all out there now. So a bit of a generic question really to start with, but are you pleased with the outcome that you've got ahead of the competition going ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a journey because I think when you speak to lots of different partners, you have to talk about vision first, and then you start to distill it down to like the nitty-gritty of an event on a day at a time. And swimming, as I'm sure many of us will appreciate, is quite antiquated in some areas. We like things the way we like them. But ironically, the agreement from pretty much everyone is it could be better, which is a little bit of a paradox there. But conversation for us started back in November last year. So coming up to a year, we've been having a conversation about this with the governing body and obviously the various people involved. Lots of layers, lots of different people involved in that, and obviously really excited to get the first one launched. And I think for us, it's a pilot, but also it's going to be a very dynamic event. So within, I'd imagine, from day 1 to day 2, you're taking on feedback. And certainly within 24 hours of the event, it's the debrief from participants, from coaches that were there, from spectators, from officials, from everyone, and actually going, right, what changes can we make immediately? And I think that's probably going to be quite an unusual part of it. But I guess the other aspect of it, and again, probably not in all the marketing stuff we talked about yet, but is the wider aspect of the event. So the venue that we're doing it at, the main club there, it's obviously the county squad and the network clubs that feed into that. They'll all get club visits from the AP team off the back of it for free. We're pumping £2,000 raw money back into the clubs that provide officials, so actually giving money back to those clubs. And there's also, I guess, again, another unusual thing, but fundraising packs. We're fortunate working with someone like Adam and the other amazing athletes we get to work with, that if you can put together a pack of signed photos and goodies from athletes like that and give it to a club, when they've got their club raffle and things like that, they've got more things to raise money with. So it's a bit of an unusual event, and yes, there's a single day, a single time kind of aspect to it in terms of the event itself, but it's the wider ripple stuff that I'm really happy we've got to that with our first event, because it's really easy to go, I tell you what, well, let's just start small and gradually build it up. And for anyone who attended the International back in May, we don't do things by halves. You know, we want it to be fantastic. So yeah, all in all, very happy, but it has been a bit of a journey to get here.
Yeah, no, that sounds brilliant. And we'll talk about the details of the event itself in a bit, but you know, you're kind of coming into the Masters space now. Do you see the Masters world as quite a key market for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wearing both hats, I guess with my personal and professional hat on, like I almost don't like the fact I'm referred to as a market with my Masters hat on. I'm like, I'm a person, I'm a swimmer, like I'm as much value as anyone else. But, you know, with a commercial hat on, obviously I understand that. And I think it's really interesting that the Masters as a group, and let's say Masters and seniors, anyone basically who hits 18 and carries on swimming, whether it's just for fitness or still competes, they're in the sport the longest. So ultimately, you're dealing with people that, if you look at it in cold sense of finance, they've put the most finance into the sport. If you look at the time and the emotional energy, they've put the most of that into the sport. When you look at all of the other aspects that come with being a swimmer, you know, the travel, the hotels, the socials, the restaurant meals, all of those things as well, they form the biggest part of that community. And if you look at the offering that comes back the other way, they're usually the bottom of the pecking order. So I think, and again, I'm biased because I'm a Masters swimmer, but I think we get the least in terms of the offering. Like, and you only have to see that if you look at the entry level events all the way through to the highest domestic events in the UK. Do you turn up to the equivalent, I say 18 and under, but more youth and age group focused events and feel like you get the same service? I don't know if we do. I don't think that's a criticism of anyone particularly. I'm just stating we are where we are. And I think, you know, speak to any Masters and ask, when's your training? You know, my training sessions run 8:30 till 10 p.m. on one night. Tonight I've got 9 till 10 p.m. And then if I chose to go this morning, which I didn't, I've got 6:30 in the morning starts as well. So, you know, and with a job and a life and everything else, we often get the graveyard shifts, which means that just to do our sport, we have to go out of our way. And then you add the competition element to that, and it's usually quite sparse. There's a hell of a lot of travel involved. And ultimately, again, biased, but I want our group, our community to actually feel valued, to actually feel like their voices are listened to, their feedback's listened to, but also that it doesn't matter whether you're only doing one session a week and you just want to go to the local kind of club gala that's being offered for over 18s, or you want to go and compete at the World Masters in Japan and have a series of events that leads up to that. I do want people coming on that swimming journey up to the age of 18 to feel like there is more yet to come. Not once you get to 18, you go over a cliff and that's it, and it's just kind of downhill from here, because I think it's the opposite. My best years in swimming have come once I turned 21. And I'm sure that's the same for many athletes out there. They've had some amazing experiences.
Yeah, I think I can really relate to that, because when I was an age grouper, the sort of the dynamic we had at my club, and the club I swam at as a kid was quite a small one. It did have a Masters section, but what we actually had was we had two guys that were of technically a Masters age, but they were far too good for the Masters team, so they swam with us age groupers. So the way my perception and my kind of friends' perception were that the really good adults swim with us, and the rest of the adults just kind of swim on a Wednesday night and a Sunday morning, and it's just the casual, you know, chill out club almost. Now that I'm a master swimmer, I'm like, it can't be more different than that. But that was my perception when I was 13, 14. Things may have changed. You know, I'm twice that age now. So I'm sure things have changed. However, you know, I'd like to think now, as an age grouper, how many of them are actually going to make it on the stage if that's what they're trying to do? Very few of them. So actually, the thought of them going, well, do you know what? I'm buzzing because I'm going to be a Masters swimmer, and then I'm in charge of my own schedule. I can go to whatever races I want. I make my own decisions. You know, rather than your parents kind of shipping you around everywhere. That should almost be, well, do you know what? Maybe I'd like to make it pro, but if I don't, mate, I'm going to be a Masters swimmer. That's going to be great.
And also, like, and again, biased because I've experienced it firsthand, but people often ask Adam when we're on tour, like, what's been your favourite pool that you've ever raced in? What's been the best arena that you've competed in on all year? And he's obviously been to so many around the world. And he's like, Budapest. Like, Budapest was off the charts, incredible. And that was my first abroad international Masters meet. I did the Europeans in London in 2016, but I went out there the week after the elites had finished and competed in the same pool, in the same lane that he broke the world record in on the 50. And I look at that now and go, I've had 90% of the experience that the best athlete in the world has had. and I'm definitely not the best in the world as a swimmer, but I've gone along. The whole event was set up to be a great experience from everything. Your accreditation gave you free travel around the city. It was a beautiful city to go to. The architecture, the culture was incredible. The people I met was amazing. I sat at a bar. There's bars everywhere at the venues because they encourage the social aspect. And I was talking to this guy who was 25. It was his first Masters, and he was an American bloke. He was so keen and so passionate. And it turned out he was the founder of My Swim Pro, what is now the huge American organization. And I met him at his first Masters meet, and we've stayed connected. And he's been on my podcast. He was the first guest I actually interviewed. But I look at him and I think the Masters community is full of people who are doing amazing things, and it's Masters swimming that brings them together. And you don't have to have gone to the Olympics or the World Championships. You're talking like more people win the lottery every year. They get to go to an Olympics every 4 years. So I'm like it can't just be all about that. And actually, if you can have 95% of the experience of an Olympic athlete being just, in inverted commas, a Masters swimmer, I consider myself really lucky and grateful that I've been able to have that opportunity. So I think there's so much out there post 18, but the way we package it up and the way we offer it, it could be a lot better.
Yeah, I completely agree. And look, you mentioned Adam there. So just a quick question really around that. So the first AP meet you did at the International back in July, right? I think it was July.
The International was actually in May. That was that long ago. I can't believe it was 5 months ago now. Time's flying.
Yeah. So there were pros racing there. This one won't include the pros, but will it include any of the AP athletes? So you've got the likes of Adam, Anna Hopkin, Luke Greenbank, James Guy, etc. There's others as well. Are they going to be there in attendance, kind of watching and offering support?
Yes, so I'm not sure exactly who, and I say that because I can't speak for all 4 athletes. We are guaranteeing at least 3 of them will be there. It's more around the fact that they're all in the World Cups at the moment, and it's just seeing how the next kind of 3 weeks go for them and whether they're going to go off and do any other meets in Europe. But I can guarantee 3 out of the 4 are going to be there, and we would hope that would include Adam as well. And I think, the other thing as well, we talk about stars in inverted commas. There are so many international athletes in this country, like massive amounts. If you look at the European under-23 team, you take into account the European junior team, World Juniors, Commonwealth teams, and the home nations as well. There's a lot of kind of 18 and over swimmers who sit in this space that usually have to travel abroad to get a high quality senior focused meet. So I can't say yet because obviously the entries are still open, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few current active swimmers from that community coming in and racing, because it's going to be a great event. It's going to be on their doorstep. Most of them won't have to fly anywhere. And it's got a decent competition spread. And I guess on the other end of the spectrum, like the Masters community, in terms of our current Masters, British, European world record holders, I can see some of them are already on the entry list. So I know the actual quality of the meet is going to be good. And I also find really interesting is the spread. And what I mean by that is like the geography of it. We've got people that are coming down from Scotland that have entered. I've got people coming from Wales, from Cornwall, from Kent that have entered. And I'm looking at that going, people are willing to travel for a high quality meet, which is obviously great. And I'm no doubt, based on how many amazing ex-international swimmers we have in the Masters community, there will be plenty that are going to turn up. So yeah, watch this space, I guess. But in terms of the AP athletes, there's definitely going to be some there. They're not just going to, walk in, walk out. They're going to be on deck. They're going to be doing meet and greets with the athletes, selfies and all those sorts of things, whatever the Masters community want, and doing like autograph cards and all those sorts of things. So yeah, that's going to be really cool. And again, talking to a few athletes that went to the Worlds, especially ones that medals at the Masters, they said one of the best bits was having elite athletes there, like presenting medals and interacting with the athletes. So I'm hoping we can replicate that in the UK and make it just a great experience.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. I think from my point of view, at least, the best thing about having kind of those athletes there would be from the point of view of being able to have conversations with them, ask them questions, like what's it like to do X? What does it take to do Y? And it's those kind of questions that I always think is gold dust if you can speak to somebody like that. So no, that's really good to hear. So something that is worth addressing is that the event takes place. It's the last weekend of November. It does actually clash with the long-standing Etwall Eagles Masters meet. So I guess my question is, what will this Grand Prix offer people that Etwall won't?
It's a great question. And first and foremost, important thing to flag, that wasn't intentional. The point of what we're trying to do is adding value to the system. Like, no one in their right mind, if you're trying to add value, is going to clash with something that's already there. And as I said, our conversations have been going on for almost a year with governing body and other groups. So how we missed it, I don't know. Human error, mistakes are made, and we are only human, but we're certainly going to learn from that. I think challenges with the calendar as a whole, when we talk about Grand Prix, before we get into the details of the meet, I think there's always going to be a challenge of the imbalance of events versus participants, i.e. there's more people that want to race than there are opportunities. Like, look at Nationals, it filled up in a week, which is great in terms of the interest, but it shows that there is more interest. There's more demand than there is supply. And I was doing a bit of reading, you mentioned around the Etwall meet in the East Mids, and I looked and I was like, I wonder if this, like, if we'd have gone other places, would this been a problem? In the East Mids, across the whole of November, there are 8 licensed youth meets, so like 17, kind of 18 downwards meets across the whole of the East Midlands counties. For Masters in that same period, there's less than 8 across the whole of England. And I'm like, if you look at the size of the community, we cater for 18 through to 100 plus in some cases. And yet we're spreading that across the whole of the country, the same number of events. So there is a shortfall. And I think for us, I'll say this like carefully. I don't think people mind traveling occasionally, but they need to travel for something that's worth traveling to, if that makes sense. And we can see that obviously there are people entered from all over the shop. So I think one of the big things for us is making sure that if you're offering opportunities, number one, they need to be quality opportunities, but number two, they will need to rotate. And I'm sure we'll get onto it later in terms of the vision going forwards would be that we have a whole series of these that go around the UK so that people don't have to travel always to one place to compete. So I think that's something. In terms of the Grand Prix itself, obviously it's got a large range of events, which is great because some people prefer the 50s end of the spectrum. Some people are more up into the kind of 400s, 200s kind of stuff. So we're going 50s through 400s and every single relay, both the open and male and the female and the mixed relays, which is quite a big program to squeeze into kind of 4 sessions. But great for masters that race a large program, but equally for people that want to turn up, do a couple of events and leave, it's relatively condensed. The production side of things is quite an unusual thing to start talking about that because most events in the UK aren't produced. They're created by the clubs or the organisers, but ultimately they're not produced. Like in the event, you're not going to have a actual director who is going to be there with a microphone talking about what we're doing here and what we're doing there. That's usually reserved for, say, the trials, for the elites each year, but then also for like World Championships and stuff. So our logic was, if you're going to create a Grand Prix that people feel is highly produced, who's the best swimming producer in the world? So the guy who's currently out just come from Berlin and is heading to Athens for the World Cups on behalf of World Aquatics, we have him doing our event. He did the International in May, and he'll be doing other events as well. So I think for us, like, you've got to start with that. If you want to create the best, you have to get in the best to do it, if that makes sense. And then for me, I guess the other aspect is the wraparound thing. Like, it's not just about like the raw swimming up and down. Like, to make a great experience, you've got to have it from kind of start to finish. So from when they walk in the door to when they leave, but also in the interactions, hopefully, that they're having with us now. So I mentioned like around like the AP athlete appearances, which is obviously great, the production element, but I guess more subtle things. So having a lounge upstairs, we've got one of the large meeting rooms, air conditioned. There'll be a big TV screen with the results feed kind of coming through to that. And just offering some space for athletes to go and chill out in, and perhaps have their lunch and not sit on poolside all day. Having things like a constant warm-up and swim-down pool. I've had a few questions about why you're running at short course. And actually going, well, because short course in a 50-metre pool means you've got a constant 25, I think it's 23-metre warm-up and swim-down pool. And I look at that and go, well, that's logical as a master, because if I do one event, it takes me about 4 days to recover before the next one. So if I can have that warm-up swim-down pool, that really helps. And when we were walking around the venue, back in the spring this year, looking at things like the depth on poolside, so that when you've got your officials line, you've got your A boards from your branding point of view, you've then got enough room for the athletes to get in and out of poolside, and then you've got seating. Is there enough room to do that? Is there enough room to have event dressing? Is there enough room to have lines of seats on poolside? If people want to bring their own fold-up chairs, is there space to do that? So thinking around those sorts of things. The structure of the program, it's obviously been designed to actually complement events. So try as much as you can with a 4-session program of going, can we move things around? So logically that you don't get clashes, you don't get certain things in the same session as much as possible, but also the way we've structured the relays. So the relays, if you've looked at the schedule, has almost a sub session within a session. So we've broken obviously the map so they're spread across the 4 sessions, but within each session there's a cluster of relays. Then there's a 10-15 minute gap where you can have a swim down, have a rest, and then you go into the normal session for individual events. So you don't have to compromise your individual events to race relays, which for us is huge. Another aspect of it, and again, we're going to be really keen to keep this going forwards for Masters events, is doing Saturday afternoon, evening, and then Sunday morning, afternoon, because it encourages one night hotel stays. Now that might look like a really subtle thing and go, yeah, but it's quite a long day, or you're there quite late and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but if it's £100 a night to stay in a hotel and we can cut that in half for every single Grand Prix, that is a massive cost saving for a Masters swimmer. Another unusual aspect, I guess, is we're going to have the poolside host that was at the Commonwealth Games last year in Birmingham. So they're going to be on deck with a microphone doing interviews. So if you break a British record or you've travelled in really far or you've got a story to tell, we're going to tell it. And we'll be sharing it on social medias and all those sorts of things. And actually, again, sharing the stories of our community, because our community is full of amazing stories. We just don't tell those stories that well, which is why I'm obviously really grateful for what you're doing, because I look back through the different people you've interviewed and you're telling those stories. So we're, I guess, doubling down on that. The branding side of things, anyone who came to the International in May would have seen, the event dressing thing, from the walkouts to the boards down the side to the whole feel of it. That for us is huge. So that'll be a big part of it. And a lot of the stuff that we're investing in will be around making the experience feel like you're at an international meet. What an amazing experience it would be to go to your open Masters meet and actually turn up and walk in and go, wow, this feels like I'm at the European Short Course Championships, except it's in Derby. I haven't had to fly halfway across Europe to get to it. So I think for us, there's a few things there, but hopefully it's going to be really, really exciting. And I'm sure that this is iteration 1, as I said. For me, it's always about what next? Let's have more. Let's do better. So yeah, the more of that we can do, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds fantastic, and loads and loads of great things to look forward to there for sure. So no, it's going to be a fantastic meet, no doubt. I'm interested on the timing point of view, because I know you said when it comes to the clash with Etwall, that wasn't intentional, and I understand that. Were you aiming for kind of late November? Was that kind of end of the year kind of a thing for you? The reason why I ask is just because I know for a lot of people their big meet of the year is the Nationals. So what that kind of means is people train right up to that, and then they hit the Nationals, and then perhaps they just tailor off a little bit, have a little bit of a break. For others, they build up to the Nationals, and then they feel like they're at peak. For whether that's for the next month or two, maybe up to Christmas. So actually that kind of back end of the year, they think, right, this is when I'm really peaking. Was that kind of in your thoughts?
So I guess there was a few things there, because as I said, we started looking at this in November last year. And at the time, the European Short Course Elites was scheduled for the first going into the second week of December. Now, traditionally, they usually run the European Masters in the same venue as they run the Europeans straight after, because it's all set up, they're all there to go. Now, obviously, they've deviated away from that this year, but our logic was, if National Masters finishes at the end of October, so many people don't get into that, but even if you do, you've got potentially a 6 to 8 week break where there's no, I consider, higher level performance Masters orientated meets in the UK, short course certainly. We need to fit in that window. Now, when you start looking at the calendar, obviously there was always going to be challenges there. And I think going forwards, although we want to get to a point where we have a rolling calendar, equally, we've got to make sure that we're having that kind of longer term view and saying, look, let's look at the landscape of what's happening in the next 12 months. The example next year, the Olympics, is obviously that's going to really move a lot of domestic things around because people want to watch it, and actually be, some people will be going to it, hopefully, but there's things like that year on year, I think we need to take into consideration. And I said the other aspect is, I guess, is that if you look at that short course season, you've obviously got the local qualifiers for the inter-counties, which is usually your county masters. Then you have the county team that goes to the regional version. I saw some interesting kind of feedback around that. And I'm looking at it going, it's a selection meet. If you're selected for your county team, that's wonderful. But a lot of people aren't. And it's the same with nationals. I see it obviously on all the Facebook groups. And yes, it's great that so many people are going to Sheffield and all those sorts of things, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And some of that is to do with the qualifying structure. So there isn't a huge amount of opportunities to get times that are going to be on the system ready for next year. Now, if you've trained and had to focus on, I don't know, 3 or 4 really focused individual events for October this year, within a month of that, you've now got a chance to focus on some other events to get those times on the board ready for nationals next year. and you've only got to extend your season by a month. And I don't know about you, but I speak from a fitness point of view. I tend to work up to Christmas. That's my logic of going, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to do this. I usually get dragged into Arena League and stuff like that. And then we get to like mid-December and I go, right, I'm going to have a few weeks off and enjoy seeing friends and family and all those sorts of things. And then you move into, I guess, the next phase, which is more long course orientated. So timing wise, like there was some logic to the implementation of it, but equally, going forwards, I think we would try and have a really thought through approach based on what's coming up in the next 12 months.
Yeah, no, sounds great, and again, well thought through, and great to have you kind of on side as a master swimmer. You can kind of speak. I mean, you mentioned already about having two hats on. You can actually speak from the point of view of being a master swimmer, which is great. You talked as well about the idea of the scheduling, so that it was kind of like Saturday afternoon into evening and Sunday morning into afternoon to try and cut down the cost of the hotels. Has AP Race kind of thought about getting deals with hotels to kind of offer swimmers slightly reduced rates? Is that something that you'd consider doing in the future?
Well, it's actually something, I'm not sure when this is going out, but that's something that was or will be launched this week. So again, a project that's been a very long time in the making. Fortunate enough, something I do when I do my parent talks with AP is I explain how a lot of the swimming community will go on into wider society and start to give you inroads into lots of different areas. And part of that is hospitality. So there's plenty of swimmers or people that volunteer or coaches, whoever it is, that have gone into the club world that their day job is they are involved in hospitality. So I've been pushing on that door for a while. And as I said, my previous job with Swim England got to know a lot of clubs and the various people involved in them. So the first, I guess, arrangement that we've got in place is with Premier Inn. They're arguably the biggest one out there, over 800 hotels. And the announcement that will have gone out or about to go out, depending on when this goes out, is that we've negotiated an advanced reduced rate. So usually you get the saver rate, which is the one that you can book ages in advance, but it's non-refundable, you can't move it, all those sorts of things. We've negotiated, you can still get that and you'll get it slightly cheaper, but you can still apply the discounted rate on the flex, which is the one that's cancelable up to the 1 p.m. on the day. Yeah. So if you've got flu, which sometimes it just happens, especially for nationals in October. Like I had flu last year at nationals. It was just what it was. Like I was training hard. Kids all came back from the summer holidays. You're naturally more exposed to getting ill. So having that flexibility is going to be huge. So the idea would be is that we're going to have a portal. You register your details on there. Within 5 working days, you'll get an invite for Premier Inn Business Booker. And ultimately what that will do is allow you to access rates up to a year out, but flexibly you can cancel them up to the day before or the day of. So for us, that's huge because that's not AP. Like that's not about this meet. That is open for every swimmer, every coach, every volunteer, to every hotel in the UK that has a Premier Inn badge on it. And for us, that is a massive leap. Now we're conscious we're a very small team. There are 3 of us full time. And actually that comes with its own challenges. You can't do everything at once. And as I said, much of what we've spoken about has been a long time in the planning. But for us, that is a game changer because if you can save every single swimming parent out there £100 a year, okay, that might be the difference between them not going to an event. That might be the difference between them staying involved in the sport and having conversations in Club World with the amount of members, masters and age group that we're losing because of the cost element of it. If you can do something that is going to impact everybody and use your vehicle, your AP vehicle as a method to get that done, of course we're going to do it. So that's a big thing for us. And keep an eye out for it. There'll be a hub that isn't specific to this event. It will just be a link on our website. You register for it and off you go. That's the first start anyway. We'll see where we go next with it.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear that. And I think especially, post nationals as well, because you've already alluded to the fact that people are going to be traveling from quite far. So nationals, you've got like a whole weekend of hotels. So actually only on essentially the next payday, you're having to do more hotels for AP Race. But to know you can get a bit of money off is fantastic. And I'm really, really pleased to hear that. So thank you. Will there be some AP Race merchandise that we can sort of purchase at the event?
Well, there will, but I think a lot of people see the stuff we've already got, both the sportswear, but also the lifestyle wear, which obviously a lot of masters, I live in my swimming hoodies. So we've looked at those sorts of things and we're designing a master specific line because ultimately what 12-year-olds want is very different to what masters want, both at price points, but also in terms of the range of stuff that we offer. So I've seen the initial designs for that. It looks absolutely awesome. We're going to have, again, we talk about the experience. We're going to have an international swimmer who will be on the merch stand at our event. Again, we're supporting his journey because he's an unfunded athlete. But I look at that sort of stuff and think that's so cool. It sounds a bit weird when you go to events now, and I still get a bit giddy as like a Masters swimmer, but you go into a competition and a kid or a parent or a coach walk past you and they've got their AP bottle, or they've got a t-shirt, or they've got a hoodie, and you're like, we designed that, in our team. That's really cool, because I think too often, and I'm not going to speak negatively about the various people I've worked with over the years, because a journey is a journey. It's full of ups and downs. But I remember specifically being told at some point in the last 20 years, effectively, stay in your box. You can't change swimming. And I'm just like, you can. Like, you absolutely can have an impact on it, but you have to get off your backside and try something different and try something new. And when they first spoke in the team about Masters, it was like, right, we need to make sure that it's specifically focused towards Masters. So merch is an area of that. And yes, in short answer to your question, it will be there, and I can't wait.
Yeah, well, neither can I. And I don't like what I'm hearing from that person who said swimming can't change. Ultimately, that's one person's opinion, and your opinion is different. And I very much agree with your opinion, to be honest. So moving forward, then, what's the kind of plan for the Masters community from an AP race point of view? So this is the kind of the first real dip into Masters swimming. Kind of, have you got anything else besides maybe Grand Prix in your mind?
Yeah, so again, without sharing too much, because we're still at contract stage with a few venues, but we will aim to have a long course event that fits in March next year, with a view that it will fit between when the Worlds finish and before British Long Course Masters. We haven't got a date yet for European Masters. There is going to be a European Elites next year, so one would assume that there will be a Masters around that, but we haven't got any insight on that yet. And then the view would be run some of these pilot events over the next kind of 10 months now, with a view that we'll have a full series functional by the end of the season, but announced. So by, say, July next year, we will be able to announce everything that's going on to July the following year. So you can look at your season and go, right, long course, short course, whatever's going on internationally, if I want to compete at that level, here's where this all fits in. But try and do it in a way that actually fits around all the calendar. So actually, let's look at when the gaps are. Let's have a chat to Scottish Swimming, who run some fantastic Masters meets. Let's look at Welsh Swimming, that run a fantastic Masters series. Let's talk to Swim England, that obviously do the long course and the short course, and actually go, right, where does this all fit in? So it is coordinated, and you don't get to a point where you have 6 meets in the space of 5 weeks, and then there's nothing for another 11 months of the year. So I think that's a big thing for us. The other thing as well is, and we didn't anticipate this, but it's happened. We've actually had a few clubs approach us around collaborating on a meet. So they're saying, we run a meet, we need it to make revenue, and we would like to work with you to ensure A, it makes revenue, but B, it's an attractive prospect for people to come to. Could you collaborate? And we're like, absolutely, we'd love to help you do that. Let's have a conversation. So there's a few of those conversations going on. We had quite a few Masters swimmers attend the London International in May this year, just gone. That'll be returning next year. In the last week, that's been sanctioned as a qualifier for the Olympics. So you can make a reasonable assumption that not only will there be a lot of the British Olympic team there, but actually looking out across the European competition calendar, you're going to get a lot of athletes that are going to go, London's pretty easy to get to. We heard good things from last year's event, and we had Masters swimmers taking part in that. The qualifying times are more than reasonable when it comes to, more competitive-minded Masters accessing it. So get that in your diaries, end of May next year. And then I guess one of the other things that I look at is, where are the gaps? And some of the gaps are, we need more things local. We need things that clubs can do in-house. That's kind of an ongoing project behind the scenes, working with coaches and all those sorts of things. But I've had some really good interactions with coaches recently about that, as to how we can potentially create things that clubs like own and do in-house. And even if it's unlicensed, then actually, are there ways of making the sport accessible on your doorstep so you don't have to constantly be on the road? Because whilst there are swimmers that are more than happy to traipse all around the UK and abroad to go and do events, which is fine, there are other ends of the Masters community that go, I like swimming with my team twice a week and socialising on the weekends a few times, but actually, I'd quite like to do a competition that's just on my doorstep. That cost me £5 to just turn up, do a few races, and then we all go out and have a social afterwards. And I think there's a space for that. But what that looks like, I'm not sure yet. And as I said, we're a small team and can't do everything at once. But I do want to get to a point where, as a community, you feel like you have a range of opportunities and you have a clear sight as to what that looks like 12 months in advance. So that's where we're working towards. Stay tuned, I guess, on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds brilliant. And just the fact that, because we've obviously got the Masters Working Group, for example, that do brilliant things, and they're active in terms of thinking about how can we make improvements for the Masters community. But to have another company, another group of people kind of looking at this, to me, that's fantastic, because the more people we can have, it literally innovating and thinking, okay, what can we do and how can we make improvements? How can we change things? Because, you know, think things might be great as they are now. We might all love the master space, the competitions that we have, the pool time that we have might be great. But that doesn't mean that changes isn't always a good thing. So I think it's fantastic that this is all in existence. And I mentioned earlier about the fact that you are a master swimmer. So you being on the AP race side is great for our guys, our masters guys. Do you personally kind of lead on the kind of master space? So you said there's three of you. If the three of you are kind of sitting there, are you saying, all right, well, look, I'm a master swimmer, I can give you my point of view as literally I hate this word, but as a consumer of, events and training and all this kind of stuff?
I think it's an interesting one because we're a very flat organisation in the set. Okay, there's three of us. Obviously, we're part-time people. We've got others as well, but we're very flat. Like, it doesn't matter if you come in and get involved in an event as a volunteer once a year or whether you're full-time with the team. If you've got something that adds value to the table, like, it's taken on board. So I'm part of a team. Yes, I've obviously got my own views on masters, as everyone has. But equally, we work in collaboration with a lot of people, both internally and externally. So we are kind of a small cog in the swimming world. And I think if you look at what actually makes up an event, in terms of the interaction between the end user, in this case, the master swimmer, clubs, counties, regions, governing body, the external organisations. So Bucks, as an example, which obviously does a huge thing for university events, like AP Race with what we're doing, and operators, which are a huge part of it. Love them or hate them, they are a huge part of the cogs that go around in our sport. Like, you have to work in collaboration. And I think one of the things that makes up, I guess, the bulk of my role when it comes to the master stuff is building relationships and actually understanding that you need to have relationships if you're going to move things forwards. You might put out the olive branch and people don't want to work with you, and that's their choice. But ultimately, we will always say, like, what can we do with other people? Because we aren't going to change it by ourselves. You need to take people with you. The second thing, you need to listen to those people. It's not lip service when we go out to 20 or 30 master swimmers in the community that range from kind of the community end of it all the way through to the kind of competing at the World Championships, and actually saying, look, what are your thoughts on this? Speaking to retired Olympic athletes, speaking to coaches, speaking to people in the governing body, and then coming forwards with ideas, and you're going, no, that'll never work. You become part of the problem. So I think for me, yes, I do input quite a lot into the master stuff because of obviously my experiences in it. But equally, my asset, I guess, that I bring to our team is that I'm willing to work with as many different people as possible to get the best end product. And I think if you can do that in any nature when you're trying to make change in something, you're always going to end up with a better result than if you just go, no, my way is best, everyone follow me, and off we go. You have to make a decision at some point, and you're always going to have people that differ on opinions, and that's fine. A range of opinions is healthy. But equally, when you make a decision going forward, you need to look at what's going to have the biggest impact on the biggest amount of people and make the choice for the masses, not for one or two people.
Yeah, again, all sounds fantastic, and I'm just really enjoying listening to you talk and just listening to you say all these, exciting things, because there's lots of exciting things coming up, obviously from a master's point of view, but also from just a swimmer's point of view, from swimming fans, from swimmers themselves. It's really, really good to hear, and you've kind of covered a lot of this stuff off already, but is there anything happening soon that you can tell us about that you think is just generally exciting for AP Race? And that doesn't have to be something that's for masters themselves, just for swimmers generally.
I'm smiling because my messages come through onto my laptop, and I've just had a message ping through from Ed saying Adam confirmed masters, which means I can confirm live that Adam will be attending the masters meet in November. So it's obviously had a good first weekend in Berlin. So I think that's really, really exciting. I'm excited for that because I know the impact he has when he walks out in front of a fantastic group of young athletes that come to our clinics and events. And I'm really excited for the Masters community to feel what that's like, because ultimately there's a lot of sports where your stars and your winners, especially when they're still active as athletes, are inaccessible. And actually breaking down those barriers and saying, no, they'll be on deck with you. They'll come and have a chat to you. They'll do selfies with you and all those sorts of things. So that's the exciting thing. That wasn't on my mental list to run through. The week before our Masters event, we're doing an event in North London in a theatre, which is quite unusual. It's called Gold Medal Mindset with Tom Bates. Tom's Adam's personal performance psychologist. And psychology is definitely an underutilized area when it comes to swimming. So that's going to be a really, I guess, cost-friendly event. It's £25 to come along to it. And that is going to be kind of 2 sessions within kind of a 3.5-hour workshop of listening to Tom coach the room on how to develop a winning mindset and performing when it matters. And that doesn't matter if you're, a 12-year-old looking to qualify for your first counties, or whether you're trying to develop a mindset that's going to support you in your business. We did a pilot of this back in May, and it was really well received. We had parents coming out of it going, "Oh my God, I'm taking this to my job on Monday." We had school teachers that were also there as parents going, "I can take this and use this in my school." We had swimmers that were obviously applying it, as well as coaches. So that's coming up. I think, without disclosing too much, but we've had, by the sounds of it, approval on quite a few things in the last few weeks, which is good. We're going to try and do a pilot event, and it won't be wide ranging because we're going into club world here, but an event that shows different ways of delivering under 18 competitions. So can you avoid a parent and one coach spending the entire weekend to get a meet done? Actually, are there different ways of doing it? Whether that's moving, so it's open and male on one day and female on another, whether that's certain age groups on certain days, whether that's breaking up certain events so that they're clustered together. But let's try some different things. So we're going to launch a showcase in the next probably 3 to 4 months. That's not going to become a regular thing in the sense of we're not going to do loads of those around the UK, because that does, go into club world, and a lot of clubs use those meets to obviously generate revenue. But I think there's only so much you can tell people stuff before you actually need to show them. And I think for us, if we can do that and get a lot of clubs come to that, and coaches come to that, and committees, and get a YouTube video out that everyone can see and go, look, it can be done. You can still make the revenue to support your club, but you can also have a great experience for the people there. So if you've got more than one coach in your club, one coach can do one day and one coach can do the other, because we've split your swimmers in half. Like that kind of thinking, that's actually going to make the experience at the end of this 12 months, people go, I actually feel a bit better about that. Brilliant. So we've got that. The Masters Grand Prix stuff, obviously, we've mentioned around trying to do a series of those, the 2024 International, and so on and so forth. We've got a coaches community, which we don't talk a huge amount about. That's grown over the last kind of 14, 15 months now to over 500 coaches around the world. It's just a free community to be part of. You get free mental health support. We do monthly calls where coaches drop in. So we've got our next one this week, sharing ideas. We've got social pages where we share motivational quotes from coaches, resources on our Facebook page and our website. So that's kind of growing. And I get one more master specific one. We've created just a masters mailing list, in a sense of if you have a space where all the masters are in one place, so you're not just sending everything to everyone, you're actually going, right, we know you've signed up to this because you're a master, therefore anything masters related, we're going to send it to you. So yeah, that's there as well. So a few things.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to ask you a final question now, actually, based on everything that we've just talked about, all the things that you've just told us about, all the great things that AP Race are doing. You said you've been with the guys for just over 2 years now. How do you reflect on everything that AP Race so far has achieved, and sort of how far do you think it could go?
The first half of that question, in terms of what we've achieved, I think it's really hard. Like, you're always your own biggest self-critic. Obviously, I think the subtle things are the bits we're most proud of. And I say that because, I went to a club visit down in Kent, I think it was January, and I had a parent come up to me and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "You were at an event last summer. You asked me a question about basically whether you should prioritize performance or happiness, or can you do both?" And it turned out that effectively I'd had kind of 5 minutes at the end of the day with this parent and just kind of given them some guidance, like based on my professional opinion. And they had made a couple of decisions, and they said, "Our daughter is so happy because of that advice that you've given." And I'm like, I couldn't give a hoot whether they've qualified for counties, regionals, or even made an Olympic team. To have a parent tell us that something we've done has improved the happiness of their child, I'm like, I'm done. And then from, I guess, the masters end of the spectrum, again, biased because I'm a masters swimmer. When we did the international, we had a few masters swimmers, especially in the evening. And we didn't, again, talk about this too much, but we had a bar in the gallery in the evening, and we had masters swimmers that came along, raced during the day in the heats, and then sat up in the gallery with a beer and watched some of the best swimmers in the world racing in front of them for prize money. And they were like, "This is cool." And I know that's really subtle, like just a master swimmer saying it's cool, but master swimmers don't say that often. You don't tend to come away from the event and go, "That was really cool. I'd like to come back. Let's put that in the diary." So in terms of what we've achieved, we're self-critic, but there are some really subtle things that I'm immensely proud of, as are obviously the whole team going forwards and what we can achieve. If we could publicly talk about the conversations we're having, it's terrifyingly exciting in the scale of the impact that us and the partners that we're working with can have. But yeah, it's amazing that I get to do what I've spent my life working towards. worked in the sport nearly 20 years now, and to be at a point where you're having conversations that could change the landscape of the sport, that's obviously really, really exciting. So where we're going in the future, who knows, but we want lots of people to come with us on that journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you very much, and obviously, well done to you personally as well as AP Race. Like you say, you've been in the sport a long time, and here you are trying to genuinely make a really positive impact on the sport. And many people do that. Whether they're coaching, they're volunteering, all of that is fundamental, and it's fantastic. But it's so refreshing having somebody kind of coming along and thinking, how can we just make things better and change things and make this sport even more exciting. We all love swimming, that's why we do it, but a lot of people outside the sport don't understand how exciting it can be. But I feel like AP Race is kind of making a good job of kind of making those on the outside go, oh, awesome, that looks fun. And that in itself, I think, is fantastic. So look, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast. It was great to meet you in person. Well, virtually. I'll meet you in person, obviously, at Nationals. But thank you very much for your time, and it was a great chat.
Oh, thanks, Joe. And I just want to add before we end there, also thanks back to you, because, again, we talk about, the olden days, if you like, but, we had the swimming magazine, or UK Swimming as it was back in the 90s. That was our monthly engagement with what was going on in the world. And occasionally you got like a story of it. And I think to be able to see someone, and there's obviously different people out there in different parts of the world doing this sort of thing, but sharing the stories of the whole community, it's really easy to go, oh, here's an Olympic gold medalist, and let's all get excited and let's look at an article about it. That's great, and that motivates and inspires people, but that's not the whole story. So ultimately, I think what you're doing, and all the other kind of organizations out there that are sharing swimming stories, is that you're starting to give people insights into the whole breadth of the sport, and that's what the sport offers. 100% of people on the swimming journey are going to experience something positive. And ultimately, if we can get to the point where you can showcase the different parts of that journey, not just the last bit, because ultimately very small amounts of people get to go to an Olympics or a World Championships. I think that's huge. And, just to kind of double down, I hope I've got this kind of message across when we've been talking, but I really want people to go on the journey with us. And I don't mean us as in AP, I mean with us as a swimming community, because we're not the center of the universe. And neither is a governing body, and neither is a certain club or one athlete. We are one community. And actually, if you're going to make change, you need the community to come with you. And I think I've mentioned around collaboration, which is obviously a huge part, but I think overcoming the cynicism and the doubters, I don't know what the stats are. There was a LinkedIn survey that I saw earlier this year that was 1 in 3 people will actively resist change, even if they're unhappy with what they've currently got. And I'm so expect challenge, expect people to go, no, we're not trying that, or we don't want to try that. And I'm that is fine, whether that's in swimming or in the wider world. But if as a coach, as a parent, if as a swimmer, you can hand on heart go, I am genuinely happy with what our sport offers, top to bottom. It's brilliant. It's perfect. Please do not engage with what we're doing, because you're happy and you're content. But the vast majority of people out there, myself included, believe we can get it to a better place as a community. And to do that, we need everyone to come with us. So it doesn't matter whether you're a volunteer in a club, whether you're the coach that gives up every single hour of your week away from your friends and family, or you're there for half an hour a week supporting the little 8-year-olds at their first session. Everyone needs to understand what we're trying to do. We are not trying to make AP the center of the universe. What we're trying to do is galvanize a big group of people that want change and help them move forwards together. And what that looks like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because if you'd have told me 12 months ago we'd be doing what we're doing now, I'd be really? I don't know if that's possible. And I'm sure, yourself with the podcast, if I'd have said to you 2 years ago, this is what you'll be doing and this is who you'll be interviewing, you'd been what? Is that a thing? And actually, that's the exciting bit. We don't know what's coming next, but I do genuinely believe, my heart believes, that we're heading in the right direction as a brand. But as a community, I want everyone to believe that the sport can move to a better place, because if we can all agree on that, at least we're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely well said. And I couldn't agree more. Thanks again, Kevin, and see you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joe.